is Mr. Monroe, and my part of your virtual field trip today is that we're going to explore producers, consumers, and decomposers. There's a very special interaction or very special relationship that each of those components that make up what we call the biotic side of that particular ecosystem that we're referring to as an aquatic ecosystem. And those interactions are very important to each one of those components. There's an old word that probably is not mentioned very much, and that is the science word niche. Producers, consumers, and decomposers are major niches or roles or jobs that organisms that fall into those categories play. I'm going to start out by talking about producers. You heard Mr. Broughton mention that we now have an abundance of water in our ponds, and we're very thankful for that. And we know there's a lot of aquatic organisms that fall into those roles that are now existing out there. I'm going to start out by talking about producers. There's another name that we give producers. We call those autotrophs. They have the ability to manufacture or make their own food within their own structure. Of course, you guys by this time should know we're talking about plants. Now, in our ponds, our aquatic systems out here, we don't have a lot of aquatic plants, and I'll mention that a little later on in my part of this virtual field trip. Probably the most or the primary producer that we have in our ponds right now or our aquatic system out here, and it's very limited right now simply because of the type of weather conditions that we have, but it is something called green algae. Looks pretty nasty. Because it's green, it goes through the process that land plants go through called photosynthesis to make its own food. And in that process, that algae is producing oxygen that is used by the aquatic organisms that live in our ponds and our lake, okay? So green algae is our primary producer. Kind of nasty looking, but it's very important. It is also a food source. It plays the same role as producers play on land, okay? Now, as far as consumers are organisms that cannot manufacture their own food within their own structure. They have to eat something else. It's part of this major energy flow that exists between producers, consumers, and decomposers. Now, I have a variety of consumers that I want to show you. I'm going to start out by showing you probably the most common, if I can catch one of these little guys, the most common fish that we find in our ponds. This little guy is called a green sunfish. Basically, if you were here with us today, we would be doing what they call sampling. I would probably have you guys in the pond or the lake in chest waders, and we would use a collecting net to collect whatever organisms that we can find. But this is an example of a green sunfish. Now, this little fish can be a prey, meaning that other fish would probably eat him, or he can also be a predator. He would probably eat a smaller fish or a small aquatic insect. So he is an example of a consumer. I have another consumer that primarily, he would fall into the category of being an omnivore. This is the most common aquatic turtle that we have in this region. This little guy is a red ear slider. He's not so little because they don't get very large anyhow, but I would estimate that this turtle right here is probably somewhere around maybe 10 years old. As you can see, if he would stick his head out a little further, I don't want to stick my finger up there too far because he might bite me, but he has red marks in a location on his head where ears of most animals are located, and that's how he gets his name. Believe it or not, the type of consumer that this red ear slider is, he is an omnivore. When I first started working out here, the population of these guys kept other aquatic plants from being prevalent or common around here, simply because they love to eat the roots from some aquatic plants. They also love to eat fish. So they fall into the category of being an omnivore. This is the most common, again, this is the most common aquatic turtle that we have in this region. And this does happen to be a male if you are questioning that. He has very special adaptations that allow him to really move about that water very well. He has webbed feet. All right, the next fellow that I'm going to introduce to you. The type of consumer that Hoppy is, this is Hoppy the American bullfrog, the type of consumer that he loves to eat bugs and insects. So he is an insectivore. He has adaptations that allow him to be an excellent bug catcher. He has a very sticky tongue that can extend out quite a ways. And if you look at his eyes, he's got pretty good peripheral vision. He has the adaptation of having webbed feet, so that allows him to swim and move about the aquatic system very well. But this is Hoppy the bullfrog. He's an insectivore. Boy, there's so many different types of consumers, right? Okay, now, whether you're aware of it or not, there are different levels of consumers. I have a consumer that's in the next bucket down here that I'm going to get out. And you know, we have primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. I've often asked students, what do they think a tertiary consumer would be in a pond or in a lake? And I come up with a variety of answers. Probably the most common is an alligator. But we don't have alligators out here. We do have a consumer like Snappy. Let me get Snappy out. This is Snappy the snapping turtle. And of course, Snappy is a tertiary consumer. That means this guy is a carnivore. He's smiling at you. Check that out. But he is a carnivore. And he has several adaptations that allow him to really survive in the environment. He's got webbed feet. He's got tremendous claws, if you notice. And look at his mouth. Does he have teeth? No teeth. But I guarantee you he'll be able to tear some flesh. Now, Snappy's about 25 years old. He's a regular snapping turtle, can live to be 50 years old, weigh as much as 50 pounds. There's one other species of snapping turtle found in our region. It's called the alligator snapping turtle. Of course, they can live much longer and be much larger. I think somewhere around 200 pounds and maybe live 100 years old, be 100 years old. So Snappy the snapping turtle is a tertiary consumer. He is a carnivore, and wow, he's quite a fellow. Why do they call him a snapping turtle? Let's watch. Wow, did you see that? All right, now he doesn't want to let go, and I'm going to put him back in his bucket. Now, as far as the decomposer is concerned, the primary decomposer, and I wish I had time to spend with you today, we would get out the microscope and we would start searching for microbes. Bacteria is the primary decomposer in water, plus other microbes that exist there. So we call those microbes simply because we cannot see them with our eyes. We have to use that instrument called a microscope to observe. Hopefully you've got an idea about how the energy flows from producers, consumers, and then when something dies, let's say that Snappy dies. First thing that's going to come in and start recycling his carcass or his body, we're going to get scavengers. And then what's left is, what's really going to help it break down and be recycled in that environment is the microbes that come in and finish the job.